Often we hear people talk about inner child healing, but not specifically healing our inner teenager. And there's a difference. I dive into the difference in this episode and 8 reasons why healing our inner teenager is powerful and transformational work.
You're listening to AbundanceHack podcast, where we talk about alchemy, transmuting life's challenges into gold. We talk about embodiment, being all of who we are in our fullness and not shrinking for the comfort of others. That is living an abundant life.
Hey lovers! At the time of recording this episode, we have a super full moon. And I'm definitely someone who is sensitive to energy, so I have been feeling it for some days, probably like a week or so. And the topic that's been coming up for me a lot is healing my inner teenager. And I've actually started talking to my clients about it. And when we really dove into it, it brought up a lot of deep stuff. So I think that this is a powerful and transformational thing to focus on. And I talk about inner child healing a lot. I work with people in my studio on inner child healing. It's so powerful. And because healing isn't linear and the work is never done, right? The next level is healing our inner teenager, because there's a difference. Our inner child is our innocence, our wonder, our vulnerability, the parts of us that need nurturing and comfort. And then the inner teenager is our identity, our independence, our rebellion. And it's also where we learn boundaries and what we stand for. So it's very different because our needs are different. When we are a child, we need nurturing and softness and gentleness and compassion. When we're a teenager, we're forming how we see the world, the lens in which we see the world. And that's why these years are so important. How we were taught to view relationships, sex, money, so many things about who we are as adults started in our teenage years. So if we weren't accepted or respected, or we didn't have autonomy, or we had too much freedom, maybe because we had absent parents, this shows up in our adult lives, and it can impact us in the way of defensiveness, fear of authority or rejection, people pleasing, overachieving. I know something about that. And self-silencing, which is, I think, another thing that a lot of people in our society are working through, speaking up, especially because we have social media. We can speak up a lot more, but is it coming from a grounded place, or is it coming from a rebellious or even hateful place? Our teenage years are when we first start to form our identity to say, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. But if those expressions were met with shame or ignored or even punished, we learn to suppress our truth. Healing our inner teenager means reconnecting to the part of us that wants to speak up, express ourselves, be seen, be heard, be free. What does liberation feel like? I actually said that in one of my meditations today. What does liberation feel like in your body? Because one of the things that I've realized with the nervous system is when we go out into the world, especially for me, like focusing on embodiment, when I'm in certain situations that are not comfortable, I feel my nervous system contract. And so what I've been working on is, when I feel that, taking really deep breaths so I can feel my nervous system expand. I can feel that expansion internally, and it will reflect externally in not shrinking and allowing myself to take up space in the world, giving myself that permission to take up space in the world, giving ourselves permission to be seen, to speak up. And I think a lot of people are looking for the answers as to why they don't take action, or why going for a goal is really uncomfortable for them. And sometimes they have analysis paralysis. And I believe the answers are in healing our inner teenager. And I think a lot of people lump inner child healing in with healing our inner teenager, but it is a difference. The inner teenager is the bridge between innocence and adulthood, between belonging and individuality and authenticity, between silencing and self-expression. So I'm going to share 8 reasons why healing our inner teenager is powerful and transformational work. Number 1 is we stop abandoning ourselves when we feel misunderstood. This one is huge. This is actually something I had to work through recently, learning how to be a team player without self-abandoning. This is huge. A lot of people don't know how to be a team player without people pleasing and fawning. And so standing up for yourself in a team, even if you fear being rejected. So I am going to be self-loyal and not self-abandon, even if that means I'm kicked out of this team, I'm rejected, I'm abandoned. And so we're often afraid of abandonment. No one wants to be abandoned, right? So we self-abandon to stay part of that connection, or stay in that situation, or stay in that relationship. I have been working through being a team player without self-abandoning. And so what this looks like is really working on the art of repair. Now, my childhood, what was modeled for me was more, if we get into it, it's over. If we get into it, or I don't like how you're acting, you're dead to me, right? That was modeled a lot for me. So the art of repair, healthy conflict resolution, was not modeled for me. So that's something I had to learn in my adult years. And when I first started, it didn't go well, right? It didn't. So I would say, hey, this didn't feel good. Hey, this hurt my feelings. Hey, I didn't like this. And I was met with, oh, nothing I do is good enough for you, right? So what I had to do was start surrounding myself with more emotionally intelligent people, which, we talked about that in the last podcast episode. So if you didn't listen to that one, definitely check it out, because it's an important part of healing our inner teenager. So if you're around people that are not doing their inner work and actually integrating and embodying the work, because there's people that know all of the terms and they're going through the motions, they can tell you all of the things and quote self-help books and self-development books, but have they actually integrated it, which is something that I'm talking about on the next episode, but let me not get ahead of myself. So you have people that are not integrating their work, right? Maybe they're doing the work on the surface or going through the motions, but actually integrating it, which is like the next step. So maybe they're on their way, but they're not there just yet. And no judgment, because everyone was there at some point. I was there at some point. I knew all the things to say, but I hadn't integrated it yet. So when you start surrounding yourself with people who are walking the talk, talking the walk, walking the talk, they're doing their work, they're integrating it, they're embodying it, then they can show up for the uncomfortable conversations. And it may be clunky, it may be a little messy, we may fumble through it. When like Bambi or like a deer first starts to walk and the legs are all wobbly, it may be that way in the beginning when we first are really learning to speak up for ourselves after years or decades of people pleasing. But when you have two individuals that can lean into an uncomfortable conversation, take accountability, and then take the steps to repair any rupture, then that's when you know that you don't have to self-abandon to stay in a connection. And that's important. And if we weren't taught how to do that in our teenage years, which it's probably safe to say most people weren't, then we have to learn that in our adult years. So healing our inner teenager helps us stay grounded in our truth instead of collapsing into self-doubt or shame or people-pleasing when others don't understand us. We no longer abandon our voice to avoid rejection. We learn to stand with ourselves. And that's powerful. Which brings me to number 2, we reclaim our authentic voice. And I know authentic is like a buzzword these days because everyone uses it, even if they're not being authentic, because there's a lot of curated authenticity, but like real authenticity. Our teenage years are when we first tried to express our individuality, and how were we met when we were trying to be individuals, when we were learning to express ourselves through music, through clothes, through art, through boundaries and opinions. When that expression was judged or shamed or silenced, we learned to hide it. It's not safe to express ourselves. And that is what stifles people's creativity. When people are like, I'm not creative, I am willing to bet there was something in their teenage years where they tried to express themselves and it was met with shame, judgment, criticism, rejection. And so that's why healing our inner teenager is so powerful. Okay, so healing our inner teenager helps reconnect us with our authentic expression, our tone, our truth, our artistry, our way of being. Whew, I just got chills. I feel so passionate about this, and I'll tell you a really quick story before I move on to number 3. So I have been talking about healing our inner teenager to my business therapist, to my clients. It's just been a theme that's been coming up, right? And I went out this past weekend and I saw these women jumping double dutch. And I absolutely loved this because it felt like a little love note from the universe. Like, you are right on point. You are right on time with this theme, because I used to jump double dutch when I lived in New York as a teenager. I loved seeing it because I just felt like my inner teenager was just so present. And if you're wondering, did I go and jump double dutch with them? I did not, because I had on some Louboutins. And I was like, I am not taking my Louboutins off and sitting them aside. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. So I did not jump double dutch with them, but it did make my heart very happy to stand there and watch it. And I just felt like it really helped me connect to my inner teenager. So that was a really powerful moment. And what are the odds to see someone jumping double dutch in Tampa, right? Like, I haven't seen someone jump double dutch in probably like decades, seriously. So it was a really special moment, and my inner teenager loved it. I said if I see them again, or I followed the group on Instagram, so I may try to go to their next outing and actually jump double dutch, but just make sure I don't have my Louboutins on and I have some sneakers on. Okay, back to the show. Number 3 is we transform rebellion into self-trust. So one of the things that I know about my inner teenager is she was rebellious as fuck. So when the world basically tells you you have to be this way, we tend to rebel and do the opposite. I went through that phase. So my teenage years and my early adulthood years, so rebellious. One of my first businesses that I never actually got off the ground but I kind of started it, never got it off the ground, was a t-shirt line called Rebel Squad. And so I was embracing my inner rebel. So I was definitely a rebellious teen, within reason though, because I was a good kid. But anyways, many adults still carry reactive rebellion, needing to prove something or swinging between submission and defiance. So one of the things I would invite you to reflect on is, how does defiance show up in you? How does rebellion show up in you? Because we all have a little bit of that in us. And if you say, I don't, it may not be in your awareness. And so people pleasers, because they come across like so giving and caring and of value, their defiance and rebellion may be suppressed even deeper. And then you have some people that just lead with rebellion and defiance. It's probably just a sensitive inner teenager underneath that just feels hurt, but they've held on maybe a little too tightly to their inner rebellion and defiance. So these are really powerful things to reflect upon, because so much of our personality a lot of times are trauma adaptations. And so if we can nurture our inner child, nurture our inner teenager, who are we then, right? If we no longer need the trauma adaptation, then our true personality gets to shine. Our true character gets to shine when we have done the inner work to release the trauma adaptations that we've adapted as part of our personality. When we heal our inner teenager, we no longer need to fight for autonomy. We embody it. Our no becomes peaceful and not defensive. Our yes becomes intentional and not performative. That is powerful. Transforming our rebellion into self-trust and grounded confidence. In order for this to happen, this brings me to number 4, is we release shame. Our teenage years, especially when we're going through puberty, often carries memories of body shame, sexual confusion, mistakes, heartbreak, or times we were judged harshly for learning or for our bodies changing. Healing this part of us helps us forgive ourselves for being human. It allows us to reclaim our playfulness, our curiosity, and confidence we may have lost back then, or confidence that we never actually gained, because if we didn't have parents that made us feel like these things are natural, these things are human, then we carried this shame that morphed into a lack of confidence or insecurities that we probably carried with us into our adult lives. I talk about shame work a lot, but doing shame work around teenage years will add a layer of depth to that shame work. Number 5 is we improve our relationships and emotional regulation. When the inner teen is unhealed, relationships often mirror teenage dynamics, emotional highs and lows, fears of rejection, control, or wanting to be chosen, competition, jealousy. I've actually been leaning a lot into the idea of competition and jealousy. I always say, I'm not a competitive person. I'm not a jealous person. And so I've been leaning into, why am I not competitive? Am I actually not competitive, or did I stuff that part of me down for safety or acceptance? Because there's nothing wrong with healthy competition, right? If you play sports, you have to have healthy competition. If you want to go for a goal that other people are going for, let's just say I'm auditioning for a part, you have to have healthy competition, right? To be successful. I realized so much of how I do business comes from, again, a trauma adaptation shrinking for the comfort of others, not wanting to compete because I wanted to be accepted or liked. And so I would just go over here and do my own thing and not compete. But I think healthy competition is important. I can't not go for a goal because other people are going for it. And I think that one of the things that I know came as a result of a mother and sister wound is feeling like if I let this person win, they won't hate me. If I let this person win, they'll like me, they'll accept me, they'll love me. And it's not true. And not saying we should be competitive and, try to beat people. It's not about that. It's about healing the part of us that felt like we had to be a certain way for acceptance, for love, or to be liked. So that teenage part of us feels like if I'm this way, this person will accept me. If I'm this way, this person will like me. If I'm this way, this person will love me. Usually those are not true. And what's important is that we accept, like, and love ourselves. So not feeling like we have to be a certain way for people to accept, like, or love us, and learning to accept, like, and love ourselves. And so I've been peeling back layers around competition and jealousy. And one of the things that I realized around jealousy, because I mentioned I was jealous of this aerial studio because it was just so cool. I don't consider myself a jealous person, but what I realized about that situation is it was data on my desires. Really, that's all jealousy is data on your desires. And it doesn't have to be malicious. I would think that most of the people listening to this podcast are good people, and you want to be good people if you're doing the inner work, if you're doing the self-development and the embodiment and the inner child healing. If you have interest in this podcast, you want to be a good person. I would bet that you are a good person. And so I don't think anyone listening to this would be a malicious person where you would want to stab someone in the back or not want someone to have something just because you want it. So there is the malicious jealousy and envy, but we're not talking about that because I don't think anyone listening to this podcast would be malicious intentionally. Now, if you ever have been malicious in your life, I just want to say this is a beautiful opportunity to do some healing work around that. Like, there are, let's just say, women who steal someone's boyfriend, or whatever. If something like that happened in your teenage years, have you forgiven yourself, right? So like even things like that, like did you do something in your teenage years that you feel bad about, that you're not proud of? And creating some forgiveness around that and understanding for what made you do that in your teenage years. Because even if we suppress things and say, I don't want to do this thing, or I don't want to be this person, what we resist persists. So having understanding and acceptance around it, and also forgiveness. And then we get to choose who we be. We get to choose who we become. And so rather than saying, I don't want to be like this, saying, I choose to be this way, and really developing our character from a grounded, aligned place rather than default from trauma adaptations. Number 6 is we reconnect with passion, creativity, and joy. Teenage energy is raw creativity and aliveness, that zest for life. When we reconnect with that version of ourselves, we reignite our life force, our art, our dreams, our curiosity, and our innocent sensuality. And I put innocent in there purposely because it's before we were programmed to perform a certain way. Because in our teenage years, this is where we learn how to date, how to have sex, how to connect with the opposite sex or same sex, exploring, right? So these are years where we're programmed to believe this is what the other sex likes. This is what a person does if they like you. This is how you act if you like them. And so thinking back to some of the beliefs that were programmed into you in your teenage years, do they still align? Are they still true? Are they outdated? So really peeling the layers back, and then creativity, like, were you shamed when you try to express yourself creatively? And sometimes people lock away their creativity and never open that box back up because it was painful. And so if we can go back to a painful time in our teenage years and offer that version of ourselves healing, what if we can open back up our creativity, our expression, our curiosity, our sensuality, without performing and feeling like it has to be or look a certain way? Healing our inner teenager helps us remember what it feels like to be alive before the world told us we had to tone it down. This is how cycles of shame, silence, and self-betrayal end, through integration, not perfection. The next episode, I dive into the importance of integration and how some people just go through the motions and they're not actually integrating or embodying it. You definitely don't want to miss that one. Healing our inner teenager helps us respond from a grounded place instead of a wounded younger self, creating emotional safety, which I talk about so much, and maturity in our connections, creating that emotional intelligence. Because again, teenagers don't have emotional intelligence. We develop that as adults. It's a learned skill. And it's important that we go back and think about some of the programming that we had as teenagers and ask ourselves, does this belief still serve me? Does this belief align with who I want to be? These are important reflections. There's some things that I learned in my teenage years that I don't agree with as an adult. And so is there a part of me or somewhere in my subconscious that still believes that outdated belief or programming? And how can I replace that with what actually aligns with me today? These are important things to reflect on. So number 7 is we break generational patterns of silencing. When we heal the part of us that learned to hide, to shrink, to be silent, we stop passing down those patterns of emotional suppression. We model what it looks like to speak up, to set boundaries, and to express our truth with compassion. And sometimes I think, there is a rebellious part of us that wants to express ourselves in a very angry way. And I think that there's so much wisdom in our anger, in our rage, because our rage and anger has been suppressed so much, especially for women. So I think that there's a lot of data in that. And I think when we go through our healing journey, sometimes we do express ourselves in an angry way, and we have so much to say and so much to get out. And obviously I did. I mean, I'm on, like 200 episodes, well over 200 episodes. And when I first started this podcast, I had a lot to say. I had a lot to say before I felt like I got to my grounded voice, because my voice had been suppressed for so long. It just was like, I just need to get this out. But I feel like eventually I was like, okay, I feel like I've said a lot of what I wanted to say, and now I can express myself from a grounded place. So I share all of this to say, wherever you are in your healing journey, be gentle with yourself, have compassion for yourself, because we've all been there, all of the different parts. I've been through the rebellious part. I've been through the express my anger part. And eventually, when you get it all out, then you can start to express yourself with compassion. And that's a beautiful place to be. Last but definitely not least, number 8 is we cultivate inner acceptance and peace. A healed inner teen helps us hold both sensitivity and strength, to be compassionate without collapsing, to be bold without being reactive, embracing duality. Because I think sometimes we're on either end of the spectrum, but being able to hold the whole spectrum, we stop needing external validation or the world's approval to feel safe. And instead, we create safety within ourselves. So I invite you to think about your teenage years. How did your parents talk to you about relationships, love, sex? What did they model for you? Because sometimes what they talk to you about is very different than what they model for you. What was puberty like for you? How did you handle your body changing? Were you bullied? Were you teased? Were you a bully? Did you tease others? Did you have any major trauma happen in your teenage years that you could offer your teenage self some healing around? Did something minor happen, but is still a very vivid memory? I have certain things that are etched in my memory about my teenage years, and it wasn't major trauma, but it's stuff that definitely shaped how I show up in the world. And so, is there a situation or memory that you can offer your teenage self healing around? How did jealousy or competition show up for you in your teenage years? Do you feel like you fit in when you were a teenager? It might seem like these things don't matter, but they definitely do. They shape who we are as adults. They shape how we show up in the world. They shape how we relate and connect to others. And we can stay in vicious cycles and adapt the trauma adaptations as our personality and who we are, or we can go back and offer our inner teenager healing and reframe some beliefs that are outdated and no longer serving us. When we can peel back the layers and release the outdated programming and trauma adaptations, then we can really ground into who we truly are without all of that. And noticing the beliefs that really don't serve us or where we're trying to go in life. When I thought about this, some of the beliefs that came up were wild. I'm like, what made you think this in your teenage years? But it's things that we think. Like, for example, around me shrinking. Like, if I am too good at something, people will hate me. If I let people win, they'll accept me. So I shrank, and I never allowed myself to go to my full potential. Because I moved around so much, I wanted to be liked. I was always the new girl in every school. And so I would rather shrink my ability and be liked than to live to my full potential. Because another thing that eventually became a belief of mine is it's lonely at the top. So if you're too good, if you're the best at something, people don't like you because you're too good at something. And so these are really bad limiting beliefs to have that I had to break through in order to step into my power, in order to start a business, in order to do all the things that I do. I can't hold on to these beliefs. So my adult self is like, this doesn't even make sense. But that's what my inner teenager felt. That's what was shown to her or somehow programmed into her because of environment and circumstances. So if we don't go back and reframe and unlearn some of these beliefs, they play out in our subconscious and they do show up in our connections. And I think when it comes to inner teenager, this shapes how we relate, especially women. It shapes how we relate to other women. When you think about how women can be so catty with each other, oh, that's some wounded inner teenager stuff. Period. Period. If you want to dive deeper into healing your inner teenager, I have a Healing Your Inner Teenager mini course in the Healthy Love Healing app. So for only $33 a month, you can unlock self-development and embodiment tools. And if you haven't done any inner child healing, I definitely recommend starting with that. Inner child healing, and then working your way up to the Healing Your Inner Teenager mini course. When you enroll in the Healthy Love Healing membership that is only $33 a month, it unlocks so many tools for you that will help build confidence, courage, and self-worth, helping you love yourself, because healthy love starts with self-love, and then it's going to reflect out into the world, and you'll start to attract people that truly see you, that truly understand you, that truly value you, and you deserve that. You are worthy of that. But in order for us to truly attract healthy love, we have to learn to love ourselves first. Next week, I am closing out season 5 with one of the most important conversations I have had on this podcast. We are going to talk about the cost of being authentic in today's society and why integration is so important. We can go through the motions of doing the work, but what integration actually looks like, that's important. It's so important. So you definitely don't want to miss that. It is the season 5 finale. And then after that, we will be starting a whole new season. And I'm so excited about everything I have in store. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, reminding you, don't shrink for the comfort of others, and you are worthy of healthy love.
Thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. I would love to hear from you. Leave your comments and questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our yummy episodes. Every time you leave a 5-star rating or review, I do my happy dance.